Hey everyone, what's going on? Recently, the main stories in the mainstream media were about this El Paso Walmart shooting and also the Dayton, Ohio shooting that happened the very next day. We also just today got the story about the Dow falling almost 1,000 points. And in this video, I'm going to show you how all of these stories are interrelated to a theme that the media is using in regards to Donald Trump and the wall. Donald Trump was the selected president who, we were told, won the election on the anniversary of the Berlin Wall coming down in history. And then a month later, they brought back the game show with that LeBron James co-produced called The Wall. And, then the movie called The Great Wall came out just after Donald Trump became the president. They were working on these films years in advance just to release them after the guy who wants to build the wall wins the election on the anniversary of the Berlin Wall coming down, and so on. So if you're new to the channel, check out some links in the description. Every day, our mainstream media is scripted with this old world knowledge practice known as Gematria, which is the practice of coding numbers into words and phrases. And our sports leagues, our told history, our entertainment, even our own lives are all connected to this because there's a mathematical code that exists all around us. And the people who control our mainstream media and so on, they understand this old world knowledge and they know how to use the math of the world to rule over the masses and keep us all enslaved in this system that they've created for us. And they give us these stories that, things in the stories don't even make sense. Bodies look like dummies and so on, right? So just check out some links in the description. You can learn to apply what I am saying. But I know that I am on point because when I saw that there was a Walmart shooting, I knew that just a few months back, I had documented on my blog about Walmart and how Walmart might be important to the wall symbolism with Donald Trump. I was also talking about how Dale Earnhardt's Jr.'s mother died, and Dale Earnhardt, his father, crashed into the wall, and then when he crashed into the wall, the guy who won the race was Michael Waltrip. Well, oh, the odds, and what's interesting about all of that was that this year the NASCAR season began on the 48th day of the year, and in this practice of coding numbers into words and phrases, if you write out wall, it equals 48. If you write out Donald Trump, it equals 48, right? And there's a whole lot more that I'll explain within this video, but this year is also the 48th Cup Series of the modern era in NASCAR, and NASCAR was also established in the year 48. So I knew there was this theme with the wall, even more so, and then we got the death of Dale Earnhardt's wife and much, much more. There was a whole bunch of other symbolism. Luke Walton of the Los Angeles Lakers resigned, and LeBron James is really important to the wall symbolism. Just know that. So anyway, I went to my blog and I typed in Walmart and I searched for Walmart, and then I went sort by date to see the most recent time that I had talked about Walmart. This is the post I made just the other day. But if you go down here and you see the first post that comes up, the last time that I posted about Walmart was on May 7th. And the interesting thing about this is if you go from May 7th to the day of this Walmart shooting on August 3rd, it's 88 days. And would you believe that in Gematria, Walmart equals 88? And if you look up Sam Walton was born on the 88th day of the year. He also died 88 days before the anniversary of Walmart being founded, and Walmart equals 88. Walmart's currently headquartered in Bentonville, Arkansas. That equals 88 in Gematria. And then I document about Walmart 88 days before this shooting that happens at Walmart. And I'll just prove it that I talked about Walmart because I just randomly posted about this band Hawthorne Heights, and I can't remember the reason that I even posted about it, but this band Hawthorne Heights just so happens to be a band from Dayton, Ohio. What are the odds of this? The last time I talk about Walmart, the main thing in the post is about the band from Dayton, Ohio. Then we get a Walmart shooting, and then the next day we get a shooting in Dayton, Ohio. Not to mention Hawthorne Heights is HH. H is the 8th letter of the alphabet, so it's a lot like an 88 even. And the reason Walmart was important to this was because when I looked up this band, it said that they were originally called A Day in the Life, which came from a Beatles song, and it was on the album, can't remember what album it was, but it was on the same album that had the song With a Little Help from My Friends. And Walmart, during this time, had been running this commercial over and over with that song on there. So I wondered if there was something important to Walmart with all of that. So I talked about Walmart, and then so we get a Walmart shooting, and then a Dayton, Ohio shooting, right? I mean, what are the odds of this? Also, even more interesting is that the Dayton shooter, we got a story about how he supposedly had a hit list from high school and he got suspended for writing on the wall, right? So we got Walmart. This guy supposedly wrote on the wall. And even more interesting is that if you've been paying attention, Donald Trump, they just announced that he's going to get $2.5 billion to build the wall and so on. And look up El Paso here. El Paso border wall. El Paso's right on the border. Earlier this year in May, El Paso actually built a privately funded border wall before Donald Trump's wall could even begin. And Donald Trump even praised this wall and so on. So what are the odds we're getting a shooting at the Walmart in El Paso that's right on the border, and a privately funded company or privately funded group had already built a wall here to keep the Mexicans out and so on, right? The wall symbolism. Let me find a better group here. Here we go. Or a better thing here. Privately funded border wall built at El Paso. Oh, the odds. So, even on let's pull up the Wikipedia here. Trump's wall. As of July 2019, they took down the old fencing. No new wall has yet been built. But this private organization called We Build the Wall already constructed a new wall in El Paso, Texas, of all places, Then we get this shooting just after we find out that Donald Trump's wall gets approved for $2.5 billion. It is a joke. In this coding of numbers into words, El Paso, Texas equals 215. This shooting happened on August 3rd, which is the 215th day of the year. And remember, Donald Trump declared the wall as a national emergency on the date of 2/15 even. He declared a national emergency on 2/15 about the wall. And then we get a shooting that involves the wall on the 215th day in a town that equals 215 in Gematria. Also, in regards to Walmart, Walmart equals 88.25. Look what Trump equals. 88.25. They said that this kid was a white supremacist and whatever else, right? And that's all about Heil Hitler, which is HH. Neo-Nazis, look it up even. Sometimes they even get tattoos of the number 88 on them in reference to Heil Hitler. Hitler wrote Mein Kampf. Mein Kampf equals 88. Mein Kampf was abridged to an English version 8 years and 88 days after it came out in Germany. Also, think about guys like Heinrich Himmler and, oh man, there's all kinds of them. There's another guy, Baldur von Sirach. His name equals 88. He died on 8/8. He married Hitler's photographer who had an HH name, or his daughter I mean, it's just all kinds of stuff. They loved Henry Ford, and Henry Ford hated the Jews. The word Jewish equals 88. And he wrote the book called The International Jew that equals 88. Let's type it out here. The International Jew equals 88. I mean, just so many ridiculous things. Remember the Charlottesville shooting where the only person who died was Heather Heyer, H.H., and Hitler even did the whole dissolution of Freemasonry and whatnot on 8/8, and it was called the Enabling Act. Enabling Act equals 88 in Gematria. Henry Ford also died 8 months and 8 days after his birthday even, you know. What are the odds of this? All these 88s. Think about Germany. Think about the Berlin Wall, how Donald Trump won the election on the anniversary of the Berlin Wall coming down. Speaking of that, the Berlin Wall was constructed. It began on the date of 13/8, August 13th. And notice what Donald Trump also equals, 138. And, you know, that was 88 days before it came down. So it came down 88 days after the anniversary of going up. You know, what are the odds? The Berlin Wall also came down 88 days before the date of 2/5. In 2018, the date of 2/5, right after Super Bowl 52, which is the reflection, that's why these reverse methods are important. But in 2018, on that day, the Berlin Wall just so happened to be down for exactly the same amount of time that it was up. 2/5 of 2018. And on the same day, we got this story, Market Meltdown, and it was just after Super Bowl 52 that was all about the stock market crash, and we were in the 88th anniversary of the stock market crash that year. It was all about kneeling during the national anthem. The word kneel equals 88, Colin Kaepernick equals 88, the Star Spangled Banner equals 88. That's why Justin Timberlake sung the halftime show, because the last time he did it with Janet Jackson, and he showed her boob, and she was singing songs off of her album called Rhythm Nation 1814 that she says is in honor of Francis Scott Key, the year he wrote the national anthem. And would you believe that the national anthem, the Star Spangled Banner, was actually signed into Congress by the 31st president, Herbert Hoover, H.H., and he was the president during the stock market crash, of all things. And then Donald Trump equals 88. That Super Bowl was played at U.S. Bank Stadium. That equals 88 in Gematria. U.S. Bank Stadium. Think about it, right? U.S. Bank Stadium. The very next day, we get the major story was Market Meltdown, how the Dow dropped over 1,000 points. The day after the Super Bowl, it was all synced up to the 88th anniversary of the stock market crash. And then, of course, we got the Stoneman Douglas shooting that was, you know, a St. Valentine's Day massacre. And if you recall, the same year of the St. Valentine's Day massacre, later that year was the when we got the stock market crash in 1929. You know, and it's fitting because Herbert Hoover is the only president from Iowa, the 29th state, that has an interstate that goes from north to south, Interstate 29. That's why Kinnick Stadium was built in 1929, and much, much more. That's why the stock market crash happened on the 29th day of October. So, I'll come back to that in a second, because that's why it's interesting that today, after all of these shootings go on, a big story is that the stock market is, you know, the Dow Jones goes down 1,000 points, right? And think about that in regards to the wall symbolism, right? Walmart, Wall Street, Berlin Wall, Donald Trump building the wall. You know, back to the date of 2/5. Think about how this happened on the date of 2/5. And, you know, Donald Trump just got approved for $2.5 billion. Trump equals 25. So does Pence. So does Dayton, like where the shooting just happened. So does Walmart. This Walmart was supposedly out of the mall. Mall equals 25, if I can type it out here. Remember earlier this year, We had the government shutdown that ended on the 25th day of the year, and it was all about Donald Trump and the wall. And on that same day, we got a story about the Pope calling out Donald Trump for wanting to build the wall. Pope equals 25. And that was also Donald Trump's second year and fifth day of being the president. And because of it, they pushed back the State of the Union address, and they pushed that back to the date of 2/5. And the big deal was with Nancy Pelosi, who equals 52, the reflection of 25. She's also the 52nd Speaker of the House. What are the odds? Also, words like government equal 52. Words like, president equals 52. White House equals 52. Important number. Also on the date of 2/5 this year, we got a story of John Wall, the Washington Wizards basketball player. Let me see if I can find it here. John Wall. Think about this. John Wall supposedly tore his Achilles on the date of January 8th, or he injured his Achilles January 8th. That was the same day that Donald Trump addressed the nation about building the wall, right? And on the same day, we got a story about the wrestler Chris Jericho, who, and think about Jericho in regards to biblical history and, taking down the walls of Jericho and so on, right? Also, Chris Jericho, he just so happens to be 48 years old, and he was born on November 9th, which is the anniversary of the Berlin Wall coming down, the day that we were told that Donald Trump had won the election. And it's important that he's 48, right? Because the word wall equals 48. Donald Trump equals 48. I'll explain a little bit more about that in just a second. There's a whole bunch of stuff with that. But what are the odds? John Wall, we get a story about him on 2/5 tearing his Achilles on the same day Trump addresses the nation about building the wall. And now today, or the same day as the August 4th, the same day as the Dayton, Ohio shooting, a mainstream media story in sports was about John Wall and how people are saying that he's getting too much money, right? Because he tore his Achilles and he's never brought a championship and so on, right? John Wall comes back up in the media after these two stories that are synced up to the wall symbolism. They're synced up to the number 25. What are the odds? Achilles equals 48. Wall, Donald Trump. The Mexican-American War came to an end in the year 1848. Donald Trump won what was considered the biggest election upset since the year 1948 as well, when Harry S. Truman upset Thomas E. Dewey. And that's important for a lot of things. Truman is the only president to die at the age of 88. And if you read out the words 88, it equals 48, just like Wall, Donald Trump. Also, look at it, Harry S. Truman equals 176 and 148. If you read out Donald J. Trump, it equals 176 and 148, just like Harry S. Truman. Truman was the president during the Korean War, and North Korea was established in 1948. And if you read out Kim Jong-un also equals 48. And when Trump won the rigged selection, it was just after the Cleveland Indians had lost in the World Series. And Cleveland equals 48. They haven't won a World Series since 1948. And earlier in the year, if you recall, the Cleveland Cavaliers had won the NBA Finals. They made that amazing comeback against the Golden State Warriors, and they won the NBA Finals on the anniversary of the real King James's birthday. And they have LeBron James, who is known as King James, and they're the Cavaliers, who in history are followers of King Charles, and King Charles is the son of King James. But then Donald Trump had his national convention in Cleveland at Quicken Loans Arena, where the Cavaliers play, and it was all synced up to Queen Elizabeth 88 days after her birthday. Elizabeth equals 88. Trump equals 88. He came out to the Queen song, "We Are the Champions." But the Indians lose in the World Series just before the election. Haven't won since 48. Cleveland equals 48. A Cavalier is a follower of King Charles. We also got the closest supermoon since the year 1948 after Trump won the rigged selection. And that closest supermoon just so would be on November 14th, which was Prince Charles's birthday. Prince Charles born in 1948. And if Queen Elizabeth dies, he'll become King Charles, right? Cavalier, follower of King Charles during the English Civil War. Then think about how LeBron James co-produced the TV show The Wall just after Donald Trump wins the election. The Cleveland Cavaliers even visited the White House on the same day Donald Trump visited after winning the election. Then, like I said, they also came out with a movie called The Great Wall just after Trump became president on the 48th day of the year. The movie with Matt Damon. Matt Damon also reminds us of North Korea, right? If you ever seen Team America, remember how Team America wasn't really important to the Paris attacks that happened in 2015. That's also why it was important that Donald Trump addressed the nation about building the wall on January 8th, because that was Kim Jong-un's birthday. You know, Kim Jong-un, 48, North Korea established in 1948. Also, if you write out World War just so happens to equal 48. Interesting, right? World War, Kim Jong-un, Russia equals 48. Russia supposedly the reason that Donald Trump won the rigged selection, when really it has absolutely nothing to do with all that. It's just all part of the ploy that they're controlling the minds of the masses with. But think about World War, and think about how Israel also declared its independence in the year 48. Israel created out of World War. And that's even more interesting because Donald Trump, he declared Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And he also went and visited the Western Wall just before he went and visited the Pope and so on right after he became the president. So the Western Wall, Donald Trump is just super important to Israel. We've also shown a number of connections to this year in regards to August 10th and 11th because it is Tisha B'Av, which is the Jewish Remembrance Day for the destruction of the two temples. And we talked about how Donald Trump is important to the third temple and so on. If you've followed my channel for the last, I don't even know, 2 years, I've been talking a lot about August 10th being important. And for about 8 months now, I've been talking about how it's really important to France this year. Think about France in regards to the Illuminati that equals 48, right? And Freemason equals 48. Think about the Illuminati and how it was established 84 days after Johann Adam Weishaupt's birthday, and he was a Jesuit. Jesuit equals 84. The reflection of 48. But a big thing with August 10th this year is this number 310. And I don't want to re-explain it all, but there's all of these things showing up, and we had the Ethiopian airline crash on 310 that was important to the Lion of the tribe of Judah. That's why the new Lion King came out. That's why the leader of Ethiopia, that was the Lion of the tribe of Judah, was born during the time of Leo, which is a lion, and a number of other things. But then we had the Lyon, France explosion, if you remember, back in May, right? Looks a lot like lion. There's all of these things connected to August 10th with it. But this year it's the 227th anniversary of the fall of the French monarchy. If you write out French monarchy, it equals 227. If you write out French Revolution, it equals 227. The French Revolution was established by the Estates General, that equals 227. Napoleon born on the 227th day of the year. And that's also the same day that Donald Trump said he was Batman at the Iowa State Fair. You have to watch some previous videos, but there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. And that date of 2/15 was also the same day that we got the Aurora shooting and Aurora, Illinois. And think about that in regards to Batman, the Batman shooting, right, that we had in 2012, just before Sandy Hook. But in 2015, that Batman shooter got sentenced. Donald Trump said he was Batman at the Iowa State Fair. Batgirl Yvonne Craig died. A guy who dressed up like Batman and went to hospitals died. Morgan Freeman's granddaughter died, and they showed him at the Batman premiere with her on the mainstream media. It was all this Batman symbolism all in the month of August, and Donald Trump said he's Batman at the Iowa State Fair. And this big thing I've been saying is with the band Slipknot and how they're playing at the Iowa State Fair for the first time ever on August 10th. And they're playing with none other than a French band. And Iowa was once part of French Louisiana. Des Moines is named after the Des Moines River, or it's a French name that means, can't remember exactly what it means, something of the monk, but it's a French word. And the flag of Iowa is even in honor of France, if you look at the flag of Iowa. We just recently got a story about this kid from Iowa who drowned. Let me find it here. He went to Florida, that equals 310, and he drowned. And it's interesting because when I looked this kid up, he went to the same high school as Molly Tibbetts. Remember last year, Molly Tibbetts went missing. It was synced up to this drowning and pink symbolism that I was talking about. And he was less than a year older than her, so there's absolutely no way he didn't know Molly Tibbetts, and he drowns. But the reason I bring it all up is because this town where Molly Tibbetts was from, Brooklyn, Iowa, it's actually all about the flag symbolism, right? And think about the flag with the kneeling, and think about how it's connected to Herbert Hoover and the Super Bowl 52, the one that was in US Bank Stadium. But this town they have a large display of flags. So, Brooklyn, community of flags. So, I know that it's important that Iowa's flag is in honor of the French flag. Slipknot playing with the French band at the Iowa State Fair on August 10th, the day that's really important to France and the number 227. And what's even more interesting is all of these things, my best friend, oddly enough, his favorite pro wrestler is Chris Jericho, of all people, right? And his favorite basketball player right now is John Wall. John Wall, his favorite team is the Washington Wizards. His favorite baseball team is the Cleveland Indians. So it's all synced up to him. And when I looked up his name in Gematria, it equals 227. And I remember I don't remember what year it was, but we saw the band Hawthorne Heights in Des Moines at a place called the Val Air Ballroom that just so happens to equal 227. So it has to be something with that, with the band Hawthorne Heights. It's just important to Des Moines, Iowa for some reason, but it is connected to France. And there's more that goes along with this even, such as Des Moines. Let's look up Des Moines here. Des Moines, Iowa. It was incorporated on the date of September 22nd of 1851. And September 22nd is a very significant day in regards to France, because this year on September 22nd, it will be the 227th anniversary of the French Republic being established, right? So there's absolutely something going on with France, and somehow Des Moines is really, really important to it. I've been saying forever that this year, 922 was a really important date in regards to Pope Francis coming to the United States in 2015. And this year, we've talked, during that year, everywhere on YouTube was talking all about the date of 923. Tons and tons of people were talking about his visit. He arrived in America on 922, which was his 923rd day being the Pope, and then he went to the White House on 923 at 9:23 in the morning, which is the 266th day, and he's the 266th Pope. that became the Pope on the date of 31313, which is, this is the second prime number, this is the 6, 266, and a number of other things. That number also is connected to Napoleon, whose name equals that in Gematria, but this year just reminds me so much of that. We've been talking about August 10th and August 11th a whole lot, and nothing happened on 9/23 that year, but just a few months later, we got the Paris, France attack on November 13th. That was on Friday the 13th, that equals 223, and it was synced up to the Knights Templar and some other things, a bunch of stuff that equaled 223, just like Napoleon's name, his real name, like Napoleon di Buonaparte, that equaled 223, and this was just so happened to be the 223rd year of the French Republic. So now we're in the 227th, and it's just the same pattern. It's reminding me of 2016, so I don't know what the deal is with it. I know that all summer in 2016 I was talking about the Indians and the Cubs possibly playing each other in the World Series, and they did, and there was a number of things. I talked about how it was synced up to the area that I live in, and then all of a sudden there's this big Native American theme. Then when the World Series is going on, we get the Dakota Access Pipeline story, and North Dakota became a state on the date of 11/2, and I believe it became a state 112 years before, and North Dakota equals 112. And Game 7 of the World Series came on 11/2, and it was the 112th World Series, 1 year and 12 days after Back to the Future Day, when the Cubs were supposed to win the World Series. But on that day, we got a shooting in Des Moines, Iowa, that killed 2 police officers, and it was really close to where I used to live. I lived in Des Moines for like 3 months, and it was really, really close, just like a mile away from where I lived. And when I lived in Des Moines, I worked at Burger King, that equals 112 in Gematria, and right across the street was a bar called the 1908 Drought House. And the Cubs hadn't won a World Series since 1908, so they had a drought. And during the World Series, it started raining, and then the game went to extra innings, and the Cubs ended up going on to win the World Series, ending the drought after it started raining over the Cleveland Indians. And keep in mind that Grover Cleveland also died in 1908 on the date of 6/24, and a major thing I was talking about last year with the date of August 10th was all about the number 624, because of the Indians being cursed by Rocky Colavito. And his name equals 624. He was traded to the Detroit Tigers, that equals 624. The Indians even played the Tigers last year on 624. King Charles III equals 624. So a lot of these interesting things, but Rocky Colavito's birthday is on August 10th this year. He'll be 86, and that's another reason why I've been watching today now, I guess. August 6th seems like a really important date. There's got to be something very symbolic that's going to happen today. So, I don't know. I'm just throwing out all this stuff here. There's something, I don't know if something's going to happen at the Iowa State Fair this year, or if it's just symbolic to something connected to France. But France it's so important. And in regards to the number 310, my best friend, who I'm talking about, his birthday just happens to be 3 months and 10 days after August 10th. Of all days, right? 3 months and 10 days. Johann Adam Weishaupt equals 310. The Illuminati was established, or it was established 3 months and 10 days before August 10th even. It's also important to Osama bin Laden, who was born on 310. And Al-Qaeda was supposedly established on August 11th, which was 3 months and 10 days after he died. 310. Also, in regards to August 10th, if you write out Wall Street equals 810. And Herbert Hoover the president during the stock market crash from Iowa. His birthday just so happens to be August 10th. And there's a number of other things important to him. His name in satanic equals 614, like Donald Trump's birthday of 614, which is also Flag Day, and he's the guy who signed into Congress, the Star Spangled Banner being the national anthem. Also, recently there was a story about Bill Murray and Warren Buffett. They had been in Omaha, Nebraska recently, and Bill Murray was really synced up to the Cubs winning back in 2016. And Warren Buffett's currently 88 years old. And Warren Buffett also equals 614 in satanic gematria. And he's 88 years old. Think about him in regards to the stock market. Stock market in gematria equals 188. So does Iowa. So does Wall. And so does Bavarian Illuminati. So what I'm trying to figure out is why France is important to the wall symbolism. Now, what does France have to do with Wall Street or building a wall? That is the biggest thing I'm trying to figure out, because I know it is related, but I can't piece it all together. So maybe somebody can piece that together for me. I also know it's connected to France because in this original Hawthorne Heights post, I talked about the guy Neo. Hawthorne Heights apparently had a feud with the rapper or whatever he is, Neo. And oddly enough, I came home the other day and my daughter was watching The Princess and the Frog. I've never seen it before. And I was like, man, that bad guy, he looks a lot like Obama. And I started watching it, and a number of other things. They worship the star Evangeline, who I thought was possibly Sirius, but it says that it's actually Venus, which is important to some stuff I was talking about with Bobby Simpson and whatnot. But Neo just so happens to have a song that's on the soundtrack of this movie, The Princess and the Frog. And this movie is set in New Orleans, which is all about France, right? French Louisiana. And another interesting thing with Neo, if you look him up, it says that he actually portrayed the Tin Man on the TV version of The Wiz. And this only sticks out to me because earlier this year, a big thing was the death of Nipsey Hussle, connected to Nipsey Russell, the guy who played the Tin Man on the original The Wiz movie. And think about John Wall being the Washington Wizard. I've talked a lot about this troll symbolism with my daughter and how it's synced up to the number 310. And, the final spin-off of that series that's going to be coming out later this year, there's Troll Hunters, and there's one called Three Below, and the last one's going to be called Wizards. And we got a story, something about, can't remember what that story was, not too long ago, about Bill Gates or calling Steve Jobs a wizard or vice versa. I can't remember what it was. Something to do with wizards. And the Garlic Shooting Festival, or the Garlic Festival shooting, the band that was playing when it went on was called Tin Man. So we got Neo, who portrayed the Tin Man. Earlier this year we had Nipsey Hussle, important to Nipsey Russell, who was the Tin Man. Then the band The Tin Man is playing at the Garlic Festival. And there's something to go with food with it all. Think about how, it's the Garlic Festival. Then we got the story about the Cook brothers surviving the Vegas attack. And also the Garlic Festival with the girl named Alicia Olive. So Alicia Olive, the Cook brothers, the Garlic Festival. Then this, the Dayton shooting. It was at something to do with Peppers, when Ned Pepper's bar or something. Peppers reminds us of Mexican food. Think about Old El Paso. There's definitely something going on with food as well in the theming. It's also interesting if you look up The Wizard of Oz, the guy who portrayed the Tin Man was Jack Haley. And notice what his birthday is, August 10th. So there's this narrative with the Tin Man, and the original Tin Man, or at least on the popular movie of The Wizard of Oz, he was born on August 10th. So anyway, I started this video a few days back, and I'm just now finishing it, and it's August 9th at just a little bit after midnight here. And what was interesting was later that day, when I didn't finish this video, we got a story about another shooting at a Walmart, and the shooting just so happened to be in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And this stuck out to me for one reason, because another story that was on CNN that day was Obama takes on hate and Trump takes on Obama. And if you recall, in 2000, what was it, 16, I was talking all about Barack Obama and how there was this big narrative with after his final State of the Union, he had went to Omaha, Nebraska, then he went to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and he gave a speech for the first time ever at McKinley High School. And McKinley, of course, is the 25th president, reminding us how Trump equals 25, Walmart 25, Penn's 25, Dayton 25, and so on, right? And what was so interesting about that narrative was later that year, we got the Alton Sterling shooting that was in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And then the very next day, we got the story about Philando Castile being shot in Falcon Heights, Minnesota. And when you look up Falcon Heights, Minnesota, that's where the Minnesota State Fair is held. And at one point in time, Teddy Roosevelt, who was the vice president for William McKinley, he gave a famous speech about carrying a big stick. And Baton Rouge is actually named after the red stick marking the boundaries of the Homa people. So there was something to do with that. But when Teddy Roosevelt gave that speech about carrying the big stick at the fair, or where the Minnesota State Fair is held, it was on, I believe, I can't remember what day it was. It was only a few days later, like 5 days later, William McKinley was actually shot at the World's Fair that was held in Buffalo, New York, and then he died just a few days later. So there's this big narrative with fairs, and that's why Slipknot is really important to the Iowa State Fair, and Iowa is really important to the wall symbolism. Iowa is important to the stock market crash symbolism that's connected to Wall Street. It's connected to France. You know, there's a big narrative with Iowa and this important thing with the Iowa State Fair. It's also interesting in regards to China being the one that made the Dow go down the other day, right? Because China this year is actually hosting the World's Fair that goes until October 7th. And it's this horticulture one, which is interesting in regards to that story we recently got about Ethiopia and planting the trees. But I'm going to skip over that. But earlier this year, I also mentioned how Obama was important because the band Slipknot has that song called Gematria, the killing name, and it's on their album called All Hope Is Gone. And Obama, he ran on hope, if you recall. And there was also this big theme with the Lion King, right? That Ethiopian airline crash that happened on 310. It was coming, or it was going to Kenya, and Kenya is where the Lion King setting is based off of. And Obama, at one point in time, at the 2011 White House Correspondents' Dinner, where he joked about Donald Trump being the president and whatnot, he also made a joke that he was the Lion King. And think about his ties to Kenya. And I had talked about James Earl Jones, who was Darth Vader, and the first Star Wars movie being called, what, A New Hope? And James Earl Jones is also Mufasa, who is the Lion King who gets thrown off the cliff. And there's a there's a big cliff theme that's going on too. Tom Brady jumping off a cliff and a bunch of other stuff I've talked about previously. Just see some previous videos. But James Earl Jones was also in the movie Field of Dreams. That's important to Iowa. And the guy who was the inspiration for that movie, W.P. Kinsella, he died in the town called Hope, British Columbia. So there is a big thing with Obama and running on hope. I even talked about the wrestler named Vader, whose real name is Leon, and Leon means lion. So Obama is a Leo, which is also a lion. And then they bring out the new Lion King movie. August 10th is World Lion Day. There was that Ethiopian airline crash was synced up to the Lion Air crash that we had in October as well. And think about how the lion symbolism is really important to the number 310. And just after that White House Correspondents' Dinner in 2011, that's when we were told that just 2 days later it was, or one day later, was the day that they supposedly killed Osama bin Laden, whose birthday is 310, and who Al-Qaeda was founded on August 11th, and Osama bin Laden died 3 months and 10 days before August 11th, right? And also think about it, Osama bin Laden, and then we get the president, Barack Obama. I mean, come on, Obama, Osama is such a joke. But look at this. Look at Barack Obama's name. Barack Hussein, even better, Saddam Hussein, Obama, Osama, Saddam Hussein. How can you not think that this guy was absolutely selected to be the president to mock the crap out of you? But Barack Hussein Obama II equals 134. And so does Make America Great Again. That equals 134. And so does Tisha B'Av, which is the Jewish remembrance of the destruction of the two temples that actually begins on the night of August 10th, and it goes into August 11th. Another interesting thing is that on August 5th, we got the sentencing of Caesar Sayoc, the guy who mailed the package bomb to all the Democrats and whatnot, and it was synced up to the Austin bomber that wore the pink gloves and so on. And I talked about how that guy's name was Mark Anthony, and then we had Caesar Sayoc, and it was important to the Ides of March. And then on the Ides of March, we got that major mosque shooting in New Zealand, right? But look at the Ides of March equals. The Ides of March equals 134. And this is important. Think about how Julius Caesar was supposedly assassinated in the year 44 BC. And Obama was the 44th president, but Donald Trump is the 44th person to be the president. And that's because Grover Cleveland served 2 non-consecutive terms. And remember how August 10th was important to the Cleveland Indians and Rocky Colavito because of the number 624? Look at the Ides of March in Satanic Gematria. 624. Grover Cleveland died on that day in 1908 before the Cubs went on to win the World Series for the last time, before they beat the Cleveland Indians in 2016. So it's definitely important. It's a big day I have been following. 624 for sure. Also in regards to Obama being the 44th president and Trump being the 44th person and Julius Caesar dying in 44 BC, right? Remember in my Buffy the Vampire Slayer stuff that goes clear back to 2017 that was connected to Kiefer Sutherland, and then we got the Sutherland Springs church shooting 144 days after Donald Trump's birthday on November 5th. But Kiefer Sutherland is in that TV show called 24, and on that TV show, the first black president gets assassinated out of office. So after he's not the president, he gets assassinated, right? So there's something interesting with all of that. And remember, so we got the Ides of March shooting this year, and then after that, we got Julian Assange being arrested. And think about Julian Assange, the Julian calendar, Julius Caesar. This was all after Julian Edelman was the MVP of the Super Bowl. Remember too, in after Super Bowl 52, I was talking about how Super Bowl 52 was just synced up to the stock market and synced up to this bridge symbolism and a bridge collapse. And then on the Ides of March, just after Super Bowl 52, we got the FIU bridge collapse. And that bridge collapse just so happened to happen on the 44th mayor of San Francisco's 44th birthday. And he even became the mayor 4 months and 4 days before the 81st anniversary of the Golden Gate Bridge opening up. And 81 was this big number. Even Mark Antony in history, supposedly either he was died or born on August 1st. That was the day of the Minneapolis bridge collapse in 2007. Remember that Super Bowl was in Minneapolis, and that the bridge fell 81 feet, and the main trusses were 81 meters long, and it took them 81 minutes to transport over to the hospital. And it happened on 8/1. Golden Gate Bridge equals 81. It was the 81st anniversary of the Golden Gate Bridge. Later that year, we got the London Breed, whose birthday is August 11th. We got her 44th birthday, right? So there was something important. When we talked about how earthquake equals 44 as well. But it's interesting thinking about how it happened on the Ides of March, and Julius Caesar, died. He died age 55 even in the year 44 BC. So it's interesting how that syncs up to earthquake. But the reason that I bring all that up is because Caesar Sayoc, he was supposedly arrested in South Florida, reminding us of this FIU bridge collapse that was also on the Ides of March. So what I'm still wondering, what I was talking about back in April was that the Julian calendar might possibly be something very important to watch. And the reason that I say that is because originally the Julian calendar, when they started using the Gregorian calendar, the last date was on October 4th, which is the day that leaves 88 days in the year of all days. But when it changed over to the Gregorian calendar, the next day was October 15th. So that means the Gregorian calendar originally was 10 days later than the Julian calendar. So when it first began, the Julian calendar was 10 days before. And I know that's important to political assassination and so on, right? 10 equals 144, 10 days later, 144. I'm pretty sure that's why we recently got the story of RFK's granddaughter supposedly committing suicide. Remember? And she died 10 days before August 11th, of all days, right? 10 days before. And RFK, remember how he gave that speech in Roseburg, Oregon, 10 days before he died? And then he died at 1:44. The time was 1:44. And remember how his brother died 144 days after meeting the Pope on the first day of Sagittarius, that equals 144. And Donald Trump, he went to the Western Wall, and the very next day he visited the Pope on his 4th month and 4th day of being the president, which was also the 144th day of the year. And if you write out 44, it equals 144. That's why Abraham Lincoln supposedly had a dream on 4/4, 10 days before he was shot. He had a dream about how he thought he might possibly die, and then he got shot on 14/4. And the first president to die in office was William Henry Harrison, who died on 4/4. So there's something super duper important to that. Even Martin Luther King died on 4/4. Remember, Martin Luther King also had a dream. Remember how in Roseburg, Oregon, we got that shooting in 2015 on 10/1? And, it was a big joke. They had the French train attack, and then the one kid who was on that, he was actually from Roseburg, Oregon. And then another guy that was in that French train attack got stabbed in Sacramento. Bunch of stuff. But just think about this date, 10/1, which is also the day of the Las Vegas shooting that happened 666 days before the Garlic Festival shooting, right? And the reason I bring all that up is because now the Julian calendar is 13 days off. So that means that Gilroy Garlic Festival on 721, 728 and August 10th are the same day. So on August 10th, it will be 728 on the Julian calendar. Hopefully that makes sense. So just something to think about, Been talking so much about this day. That garlic shooting was really, really, really synced up to the number 310 and all the Buffy the Vampire Slayer stuff that I was talking about. Also, August 23rd this year on the Gregorian calendar would be August 10th. And this is Kobe Bryant's birthday. Kobe Bryant was important to Toronto winning the NBA Finals and a bunch of other things. So I don't know, I'm just trying to piece it together. Possibly there's something just really, there's got to be something important to it. Political assassinations, they wouldn't bring the Caesar Sayox story back up right around the same time if it wasn't important, to Julius Caesar. And then the two presidents that are important to 44, and so on. And even remember the 10 Days Before stuff was all synced up to Marilyn Manson, who had the album it was his 10th album that came out in the 10th month, October, and he missed 10 shows and a bunch of stuff, all kinds of the number 10. He has a song called Say 10, You Say God, and I say 10, like the number, and God equals 10, and so does Satan in Gematria. And there's, the 10 Sephiroths on the Tree of Life to understand God, and so on. So there's something important to that. October, in regards to Rome and whatnot, Oct is 8, so October 10th and October 11th are also interesting as well, because that's similar to 810 and 811. I'm just wondering, there's got to be something with these calendars. Also, that White House Correspondents' Dinner was in 2011, and that was the year that, they supposedly killed Osama bin Laden, 2011. And earlier this year, I got a YouTube strike on an old video from 2011 that's really made no sense why I got this YouTube strike. It was all synced up to the movie The Breakfast Club, and that movie, the day I got that strike, was on 2/15, which was the same day we got that Aurora shooting that's all synced up to Batman, and Donald Trump saying he was Batman at the Iowa State Fair, and the the Breakfast Club actually came out on that day too. So it was like the 34th anniversary of the Breakfast Club, and my video involved the Breakfast Club. And I'm just thinking about this Walmart shooting that happened on the 215th day in El Paso, Texas, that equals 215, and Trump's wall being, the national emergency being declared on the date of 215. It was this big thing I was talking about for a long time. I didn't understand it all, but I knew it was important to Saturday Night Live. Saturday Night Live equals 215, also 810. Earlier in the video, I mentioned Molly Tibbetts and the drowning story in Florida, and with the Iowa kids, right? Molly Tibbetts' name equals 215. Chris Farley died on 215, so that's why Ross Perot died, because it was synced up to Wayne's World that was on Saturday Night Live. The last had an episode on the date of Valentine's Day, and that show set in Aurora, Illinois. And then I talked about how Dana Carvey is important to Ross Perot, and then Ross Perot dies in July. So it's just interesting. I would get that strike, and it was from a video from 2011. And I keep bringing this up because in Ethiopia, on the Ethiopian calendar right now, it is the year 2011. And remember that the Ethiopian New Year is actually normally on 9/11, but this year it's on 9/12, and that was synced up to the airline crashes and so on. So it makes me wonder. I've been wondering about this date too, August 27th of 2020. That's the day that the Lion of the tribe of Judah, Haile Selassie, one of the rulers of Ethiopia, right? He died on August 27th, but in the year 2020 on the Gregorian calendar, that'll actually be 12/21 of 2012 on the Ethiopian calendar. And that's just interesting, right? Remember the Mayan calendar and this big day that everybody talked about? They even made movies about it and so on. 12/21/12. Next year on August 27th, that will be 12/21/12 on the Ethiopian calendar. So I don't know. There's something important to it. So I guess I'm just saying, it just seems there's something really important. And even think about political assassinations with Julius Caesar. And Julius Caesar was killed by the elite people, right? The Senate and whatnot. They murdered him because they didn't like what he was doing, right? And think about how they're trying to build this narrative with Donald Trump trying to take down the NWO, and all these Democrats are part of the NWO, and that's why Caesar Sayoc sent the mail bombs out to the Democrats and so on, right? Because he didn't like the Democrats. And Donald Trump's trying to, the narrative is that he's trying to defeat the elite even though he's part of the elite. And think about Julius Caesar, who once got killed by the elite for a similar reasoning, it seems. And Julius Caesar was probably, whether he's real or not, if it is a real story, he was part of the elite as well. But they made it seem like he wasn't part of the elite. You know what I mean? So there's definitely some interesting narratives going on with it. And I'm really wondering about Obama. It's funny too, this ad pops up, Brian Banks, of all things, right? Brian Banks. And we just got a story about a football player, or a football, can't remember what it is, but his last name is Banks. Something to do with the Miami Dolphins, I believe. I can't remember what it was. Something to do with Banks, though. His last name was Banks. Think about how that's all connected here. So I know there's a lot to take in. If you're new to the channel, you probably already turned it off, but oh man, I feel like there was one other thing I was going to mention, but I just think we need to watch these dates that, you know, moral of the story, I think we need to watch these other calendars. I think that's something that is very important to what's going on with the narrative. And even August is important because August is named in honor of Augustus, who was the first ruler of the Roman Empire, who was born on the date of 9/23, which is that big day in 2015 with the Pope and so on. It's also the day that Donald Trump called out the NFL for kneeling, and the day LeBron James called him a bum. And it was all synced up to Super Bowl 52 that was synced up to the bridge symbolism, and then we get the bridge collapse on the Ides of March. So see if there's an event that's connected to the Julian calendar. Maybe August 23rd is really important, because it will be August 10th or August 24th even, because it would be August 11th on the Julian calendar. So moral of the story, I'm done talking. Have a good one. We'll see what happens. Peace.